After securing the station, along with all the communications going in and out, and all the ships going in and out, a few of the ships didn't even know what was going on. They were in the middle of docking or trying to go through undocking procedures when I locked them down. The ones that actually got locked onto the station at first came in with plenty of cargo, plenty of personnel, and unfortunately for them, plenty of humans on board ready for sale and trade. This did not go over well, and I did not even attempt to quell the rage that was in everyone's hearts as they went into those cargo areas and just tore asunder everyone. The only ones they did not destroy were those that were clearly children themselves, those that did not know any different. We may be monsters right now, but we are still human. But that did not save their parents from the wrath of those, especially when they found that women and children had been abused. Immediately, they grabbed whoever was injured, brought them straight to the medical bay so that they could be treated or regrown a limb or two. In one case, one man was torn, both arms, both legs were gone. His body was just full of bruises. Hell, he was even missing his jaw, but he was still alive. I was able to make sure that he was completely healed before too long, although the amount of pain that he had to go through while growing all 5 portions back had to be excruciating. With that, we began to make plans. I tried to contact all the humans as best I could, but let's face it, not everyone has the same connector that I do. I found out that mine had been jazzed up just a little bit to help out with the medical section. If you didn't have a specialized job and were just there for entertainment, then you were strictly able to understand different languages. There was nothing extra in the implant itself, and unfortunately, this we would have to fix with all of them. We informed them about this, and no one was very interested in having alien technology pumped into their heads, but we had to get this done. They wouldn't be able to pilot the ships otherwise, and that's when I laid out my plan for them. There were several thousand ships docked right now. Those that were waiting to get docked were just told to stand by. That's all they got was a standby signal. Eventually, if they didn't try to dock, they wouldn't realize that the station had been taken, and we could go out of here with impunity. Our plan was simple. Make sure we take as many ships as we can, and make sure no one follows us. We need to decide which ships, and thankfully I wasn't the only one who could plug in, and we began to search through the manifest to see what ships were best, and oh howdy did we find some good ones. We actually found a couple military destroyers that were locked in. The only reason they didn't fire on the station is because they knew that if the station blew and they were still attached to it, they're gone as well. The kicker is they can't close their cargo bays while we have them latched in. The cargo bay doors themselves latch into the station. If they try to rip themselves away, they're simply going to rip half of their hull open. Not a smart idea in the vacuum of space. With that, we made plans to take down the destroyers, and we did. As I was in the medical bay fixing up a few others with these new implants, I could hear everyone over the comms. Okay, we got this one. On to the next one. Got the bridge. Captain's dead. XO is over here, over there, and over there. Oh, yeah, we're sending more wounded your way. And all different sorts of replies from there. I didn't care. All I cared about was getting everybody fixed up and getting ready to take off on the plan. We would have to leave simultaneously not to let anyone know what was going on. We forced all the Xenos into the arena area, and I mean all of them, and they were cramped in there very, very tightly. What they didn't know was what we had planned for them. All they knew was that we wanted them away from their own ships. I wager that a few of them had figured it out. However, I did inform a few others that there were a few species that were not a threat. Our little bugger friends, they didn't have any problems working with us. They turned out to be surprisingly intelligent, yet they still spoke in that constant chatter that they do. They just don't stop. Unless they're in a hibernation cycle, they just don't stop talking. It's hard to carry on a conversation with them. Also the Zells, my little troll friends. They were, of course, let free. It turned out that both of these were slave species along with us. However, they were more than willing to follow us as long as we removed the control collars and gave them the option to return home. We would do this as soon as we possibly could, but as they knew, things were about to get crazy. Once we had everybody implanted, which took probably 2 days, I don't know, I wasn't watching the clock, but I was exhausted. Everyone had chosen their ships. Me by myself, I decided I would take a small crew with me of only Zells. I didn't want any buggers on mine, and I was going to take a small shuttle, but what they didn't know was when I checked this shuttle, it had some nasty guns on it. And I was going to find my way out of here. We would all find our way back to Earth, but we'd have to take different routes. It didn't take long once the implants were into effect for everyone to hook up to the system's mainframe, look up star charts, and be able to figure out how to read them pretty damn quick. Even the kids seemed to catch on this really quick. To my surprise, the implants took so well with the younger generation, it was absolutely scary. One thing I did do was I made sure that we stripped the entire medical bay and stripped all the resources we could. Anything that we could fit into those ships, anything we could use, we were going to take. To our shock and surprise, we found a whole bunch of exactly what we needed. Food, water and water purification, extra parts, weapons, all sorts of goofy stuff. Thankfully, a few of the guys that were still alive were engineers, and they're like, okay, I'm going to mix up something real nice for these folks. It took another day, and those in the arena were definitely getting restless. But we told them within 12 hours they would be released. That seemed to calm everyone down, although they were clearly getting hungry. I didn't care. The way they treated my kind, I couldn't give this beginning of a crap about them. Eventually, loading up my ship, I had about 7 Zells with me. Each of them liked being around me. One of them, I had actually treated her son. Unfortunately, her son was sent into the arena. And, yeah, he didn't make it. I told her she has my condolences, and I let her cry if she wanted. She seemed to have an extremely hard heart on that one, as she simply wanted to finish her task and get the hell away from there. When it was the time to release us from the station, I got on the PA system and I let everybody know I will do a countdown for when we are all going to release from the station. That way we can all disappear at the same time. Everyone agreed, of course. And then I put my final plan, the final solution, into action. I got on the PA system and I said, "Attention, all, attention. This is the humans. You know, those you thought you could make slaves of, subordinates. You thought you could turn us into your whore. Well, we will no longer be your whores. We will no longer be your slaves, your servants, your medical technicians. We will not carry your cargo. We will not carry your purse. We will not be around you anymore, for this is the last time you will see us. No more will you deal with humans. No more will you be even thinking of us. No more will you ever be a threat to humanity. And you want to know why?" And with that, I reached down and flicked one switch. And inside the arena, all the doors opened. All the creatures that were going to be used for the games were released. They all seemed to stagger out, confused, looking around and looking at each other. And then I hit another switch. And with that, the protective shield between the audience, those that were left on the station, and those creatures was released. And it did not go unnoticed by the creatures. They immediately turned and looked up and realized that the energy shield that would protect the audience was gone. The audience freaked out and began to try and scurry away, slime away, skitter away. But anyway, to get away, they tried like hell to run up against the doors, but the doors were sealed and the creatures went up. And all I could think of is, enjoy karma, you bastards. And with that, we all detached from the station. and we all drifted off. I plugged myself deeper into the system. I had to close my eyes so that all I could see was the system readouts. I knew the Zells were around me as they seemed to be holding me down, trying to strap me in so that the inertia would not throw me against the wall. I rotated the ship and sent out a single message. I'll see you all back home. No more will they have us. As that, I could see ships jumping in the FTL, trying to dodge other ships that were leaving, or trying to dock with the station. And when my turn came up, I simply stated, "All right, hold on, we're about to go into our jump." And with that, we disappeared. I was the last ship to leave. 10 seconds later, there was no space station to return to. I made sure the self-destruct system did exactly what it was supposed to. Do you think it was mean to let the creatures go and have a final meal before I blew them all to hell? Perhaps. But my rage had reached its limit. I was no longer interested in being kind to them. I just wanted to go home. We all clearly took different routes, but it was clear our destination was in one place. It would take several weeks for us to actually get to our destination, so I figured I would enjoy being in space. I put the autopilot on, and I simply got out of the chair. I set up the alerts to be loud so that no matter what, it would wake me up and I could take control of the ship if need be. The Zells turned out to be surprisingly smart for such small creatures. Intelligent like a teenager, not intelligent like wisdom like an adult. But they could definitely carry on a conversation. They loved the games that I created for them, and they were fun to be around. Some of them started getting a little friendly with me, which kind of grossed me out, considering I'd end up actually breaking them in half if that was the case. However, I told them to don't worry about it, and they should stick with their own. It is the way it should be. They seem to be a little put back by this, but it is what it is. I spent a lot of my time exercising, studying, and doing not much else. Of course, there wasn't much else to do. A few of the Zells would challenge me to games, so I'm sitting there playing chess, checkers, and backgammon all at the same time, kicking their butts pretty good, but they were getting better. I also ran them through some basic combat drills, taking apart some of the energy weapons so that they were small enough for the Zells to use. That way they could actually protect themselves next time somebody tried to raid their planet. They might not be able to kill them all, but they'll definitely make them think twice. While the trip was underway, all I could think of is how it would be nice to get home. It would be so great to get home. And as I worked out, as I studied, I looked through the manifest to see what was there. This little ship was set up as a stealth fighter. I couldn't understand it at first, but eventually I figured out what was going on. It wouldn't be able to mask itself visually, not much can, but it could mask itself from most sensors, which made it extra for reaching inside formations and being able to give a killing blow on someone's engines before they even knew what was going on. It was also packed to the gills with missiles, not many launchers. They fed in almost like a conveyor belt. And it worked. It worked wonderfully. Because missiles, once you lock on, there's no shaking a missile. Not in space, there's not. So I knew this would come in handy. Unfortunately, there was only one main gun. It was a type of energy weapon. So I knew, if need be, I could always go full A-10 Warthog and just mow someone down. That being said, I also looked in the schematics and realized, though technologically advanced, the construction was very simple. I started toying around with the idea, spending several hours with my head locked into the machine as I began to work its way around. Since each ship, every ship, doesn't matter if it's a cargo, hauler, or a battleship, every single one comes with an automated construction module. I looked into ways to actually make the weapons better than they actually were. And honestly, it didn't take much. A little human ingenuity, and I'm not even an engineer. Makes me wonder what kind of crazy crap other people are going to come up with. That being said, I was also able to have not just the one main cannon, but eventually I was able to install two smaller ones that pulsed. Each pulse would have the same effect as a single solid hit from the main gun. The only problem is the damn thing heats up real quick. I get 3 or 4 strafing runs before I have to peel off for about 30 seconds to let the cooling system do what it does. Anything above that in the system, I had to put in an automatic shutdown so it wouldn't actually fire. Heat too much, the whole system explodes. And yeah, that would be bad. A little bad. Along with that, I looked into the guidance system for the missiles. Not much I could do there. You really need to know what you're doing when it comes to this sort of thing before you can really tinker with that. I simply looked at ways to make the missiles more maneuverable, a little more agile, and a lot faster. Which, honestly, there wasn't much I could do there. I ended up being able to pack the missiles a little tighter with propellant, but that's about all. Aside from that, it was a long, long trip. I didn't have too many people to keep my mind fully occupied, so that's where the studying came in. And of course, all the exercise. The Zells actually joined me, which I was surprised. And before too long, I could see that their bodies were beginning to shape up similar to mine, actually. At least the guys. I could see more muscle tone in them. They tried to keep up with me with the amount of repetitions, since most of my stuff was body weight. I didn't have much else. I did increase the gravity inside the cargo bay, so when I worked out, I had more resistance. This tended to be a little too much for their small bodies, unfortunately. They were not ready, as the first one, as soon as he stepped in, face-planted and almost passed out from overgravity. I felt really bad about that one, but thankfully, once I got him out of the doorway and he returned to regular gravity, he was okay. Poor guy. Although, we did have to go to the medical bay so I could fix his broken nose. When I was one day out from Earth, I was so grateful. I just wanted to be back home. But I worried. I worried what would be there waiting. If they'd been pirate raided, would they shoot me? Would they blast me if I got too close? If I ended up right in their atmosphere, you know what? It ain't worth it, because I don't need to end up in the atmosphere and then have a squadron of F-22s up my butt. That'd make you walk funny for a week for sure. So I decided I would stop at just outside a lunar orbit. At least that way, if anything happened, I'd have enough time to tell them, hey, don't shoot me. I told the Zells what was going on, and of course they were happy to be there. They were actually just happy to have somebody on their side who was willing to fight for them and with them. I said to them, hey, don't worry about it. As long as you're friends with us, we're friends with you. That's what humans do. At least most of us. They looked at me weird for that, and I had to explain the different cultures, which, as one of them said, please stop, my head hurts. I said, yeah, don't worry, it gets confusing. I've had a lifetime to figure this out, and you're not going to figure it out in 20 minutes. Upon jumping just outside of lunar orbit, I was actually on the other side of the planet from the moon, thankfully, because the gravity yank that would happen from being too close to a gravity well, that can hurt as it throws your body halfway across the room or all the way across the room, where you land with a very hard thud. But when I stopped, I saw something I really was afraid of. I saw ships going in and out of the atmosphere. I looked over and I could see not only several destroyers, but I could see dreadnoughts. I could see cargo haulers. I could see all sorts of mining equipment. These bastards. I looked at my former beautiful green and blue jewel, and parts that were supposed to be green were now solid brown, or they were solid black. My heart dropped out my ass at the sight of my beautiful planet is now being strip mined for its resources. I tried to keep from just jamming the throttle and going in guns blazing, but I looked around and all I could see was alien enemy everywhere, and not even of the same species. You would think the ones that would come in and just trick us into doing what they want us to do. They would be here. They would try to stop this so they can control it, so they could actually have power over this. I simply used a hailing frequency and put everything basically in text. That way they didn't know it was human talking. I asked them what happened. I heard that there was a lush green planet. Why has it been torn apart? This is the command of the Garetian Council. You are now in our space. We have purchased this planet. This planet is now ours to do with as we wish. You should leave this space unless you have business with us. Senator Rishian. I was trying to remember where those were, and then it hit me like a brick in the face. These were the same folks, the same lizard folks that had sold to me. They didn't all talk in that strange manner, but oh dear God, I knew who they were. This was not good at all. I knew I'd be one of the first ones to get here, so I waited. And I wondered what the hell was going to happen. And thankfully, what happened was those two destroyers jumped in at the same time, almost next to each other, but they were almost on the other side of the planet. I caught them on my sensors, and I read their IFF code. They're ours. I made sure they got my IFF code, and they stopped. And I sent them a message. Do not fire. Not yet. Hold fire. Stand down for the moment. Stand fast. Do not do anything. For the love of all that is holy, do not engage yet. Thankfully, they listened. But it wasn't long before other human ships came in, and they were not going to listen. One of them was a very, very large cargo hauler. This thing was loaded to the gills with supplies, and as they came in, the captain must have simply just ordered all guns blazing, because as it came in, its point defenses just began to open up on any ship that was nearby, anything that didn't read human IFF code. Well, okay, fuck it. I told my Zels to hold on, and we rocketed forward. I began to aim straight towards the first of the dreadnoughts as it came around and tried to bring its main gun to bear. Just like all other ships, the main gun is built into the keel of the ship, so it had to traverse itself. As it began to flip end over end, I came about to it on its broadside. I caught it right at its ventral core, and I began to fire into it. This time, it was not ready for anything, as it was trying to aim at my friend. I caught it a good strafe right through the center. I followed it up with a barrage of missiles as I tried to fire as many as I could as I approached. Unfortunately for me, only the first two missiles got through as their point defense system activated and blasted the rest. I tried to flip around and move so that I had time for the weapons to cool, but I didn't have much time as I was closing in. I'd be within point defense weapons range very soon, so I aimed for the same hole and fired again. This time, a secondary explosion blew up inside. I didn't know what it was, but the blue flash that came out, I hit something big. Something just blew out, and I didn't know what it was. The ship continued to rotate, although it had jerked to one side from the force of the explosion blowing out the hole. And as it spun around, I saw the nose of the ship pass by that cargo hauler, and I'm thinking, okay, that's point blank. They're not going to miss. But they didn't fire. In fact, I realized the entire ship had gone dark. I had hit something. I still don't know what it was, and I did not care. I arced around as fast as I could, trying to get as far away as possible. Had to do a flip and burn, and I could hear the Zels screaming, ow, 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 as they all bounced around inside. I screamed at them, I told you to strap in, as I tried to get distance. I then heard the alarms as several missiles had been locked onto me and fired from the other dreadnought. I was like, oh, crap. As the missiles got close, I thought, oh, let's hope this chaff works. I fired chaff out and thankfully got most of the missiles, save for one of them. And as it drifted closer and closer, I tried to hit the engines as fast as possible, but they were already on their absolute limit. I couldn't bypass any other extra speed, any other extra power. Oh God, I'm going to die here. And then something fired out and shot the missile. The two destroyers had made it past the planet and were now engaging. They were firing directly into the dreadnought, causing it to have to turn its main weapons. It turned its turrets that way and began to fire, but the destroyers had already laid into it with a massive barrage. I did another flip and burn and blasted towards it, firing all the missiles I could within the next 10 seconds. This drained about 50% of my remaining missiles, and I fired a good strafing run right into where I believe the bridge was. I have no idea if it was the bridge, but the point defense systems took out most of the missiles, save for two. Two of them struck in as they were too busy trying to shoot down the rest of the destroyer missiles. And surprise, surprise, they were not ready for a shock and awe blitzkrieg attack. The destroyer was hit, unfortunately, and it went adrift for a little while, but the dreadnought itself, it not only went adrift, but it got caught up in the Earth's gravity well and got pulled down towards the planet. We could see that it gained its power back and began to fire its main engines as soon as it can contort itself so that the engines were facing down. One of the destroyers arced one of its main weapons and fired down into one of its engines. It damaged the engine, but sure didn't destroy it. At that point, the dreadnought could not get itself to exit the Earth's gravity well. It started going down, not very fast. It almost seemed like a Titanic was sinking once again, but this time bow first. They were not going to go down without a fight either, as they began to spin their weapons around and firing at any human ship, at least they thought was human ship. The cargo hauler that had started it all was already heading down towards the planet. Apparently they decided to use themselves as a blockade runner. I spun back around and began to engage another ship, but most of them were too far off. They had just saw two of their dreadnoughts go down at the loss of only one of our destroyers, and they weren't even sure who was on what side, and more ships were still blinking in from all different directions of the planet. The dreadnought was slowly going down, and hopefully it didn't take most of the planet with it, and the destroyers were simply engaging any ship that did not have a human IFF code. The aliens couldn't figure out who was friendly and who was not, and it was very common to see them firing on their own personnel as they realized that anybody could be an enemy. Anyone could be someone who was trying to take them out. Every different species that was there was already suddenly an enemy, and we knew this was our chance. I pinged the last enemy destroyer that was around Earth, and I put it out, net call, net call, net call. All human vessels, I have marked your target. That is your primary target, their last military vessel. Do what you can. If you're within range, fire for effect. I say again, fire for effect. And with that, several other ships turned their weapons towards that ship and fired. It was busy firing on its own ships of all things, and we simply laid waste to it. One of the shots must have hit the bridge because it again went adrift and completely shut down. We didn't hit it anywhere near the engine compartment, and yet it was out for the count, and it was simply drifting out into space. A few of the aliens screamed that they wished to surrender. I didn't have any say in this matter, as other human ships simply fired on them with reckless abandon. The only ones they didn't is when they screamed out, "We have humans aboard! We have humans aboard!" And we told them to power down. I pulled up next to one, and I put my guns right towards the bridge, and I told him, "Power down now." Thankfully, they did. It was another cargo hauler, not as large as the one that had shot through the line, but big enough. I used the scanners to check, and sure enough, there was human life signs on board. Unfortunately, my ship was not big enough to dock with them, so I called over one of the other ships to do so. This one was another cargo hauler of about similar size, which could dock easily. I asked them to open up comms with me so I could see what was going on. They did so. However, the screams of pain coming from the Xenos when I saw a video of not just teenagers and children, but women with infants in cages. Thick metal cages, many of them beaten, and one woman holding on to the lifeless body of her child. When I saw that and I heard the screams, I simply turned the comms off and I radioed in our last remaining destroyer. Captain Pishtun, can you radio down to Earth and find out if there's any human settlements remaining that can pick us up? My comms aren't strong enough to reach down. All I got back was, affirmative. Wait one. And I waited there for a good 10 minutes. Then he responded, Roger, we actually got one. There is one human settlement, one sector of this planet that has not been taken over by the frickin' Xenos. Roger, look, I'm going to go down, let them know I'm coming. Can you guys stay up here for a little while and protect this place? We're going to have to clean up this mess, and we're going to have to get ready for what's next. Because they will take humans no more.